We're excited for everyone to be here, and hopefully will, for those of you who are hesitant about running, we can ease some fears or misconceptions. You'll hear running shoots your knees, or you still want to walk by the time you're 50, you should not run. And, just a lot of it is about form, technique, training, nutrition, like all of these things. It's very multifaceted. So, but in the world of triathlon, at least for myself, I know coming from a run background has really helped me be successful in the minor success that I have had. Bike for show, run for dough is I think is a true statement. And if you are smart and have a plan, it can really knock some serious time off of your time. And the fact that you're ending with it and you can kind of go and chase, I think is a really fun mindset to be in towards the end of a race.
Instead of just survive.
Yeah, going I'm starting to think about go hunting for girls in the second half of the race, not just please don't die, So, and I think that has taken time and intentionality to get into that mindset. But we do have an outline, and then there will be time for questions at the end, and we welcome any and all questions, with regards to either therapy or any part of running. We're not dietitians or, shoe salesmen or anything like that, but we do have some rudimentary knowledge and, kind of all of those categories. So
rudimentary is not but yeah, just a couple things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how to warm up, proper things to do like that. Then we're going to talk about different running form, like what most people do when they do it wrong, if that makes sense. And we'll go over that. We might even show that, might even run on the treadmill a little bit and show you what it looks like. And then we're going to talk about drills to fix every single running form problem. So you might be like, hey, that's me. Then we'll kind of give you drills to fix it. And then we're going to talk about shoe selection, maybe orthotics. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll take your shoe off and look at it. And then we're going to talk about brick running, the important thing for triathlon, how much brick running to do, when to do it, and different things like that. And we're probably going to integrate some heart rate talk in there too, for running. So
yeah, absolutely. So this is just something I've known about, but I'm an anal and a data guy.
Yeah.
The treadmill running, I'd be interested in your guidance and direction for us, because that's what we're doing right now, more of that than we care to. But I notice when I run on the treadmill, the distance and speed, and it's calibrated, I don't get caught up in it, but where I'm seeing the big differences on that gait, or the stride length. And it seems like when you run on a treadmill, if say I'm normally around a meter plus or minus a little bit, it seems like it's like 10%, almost 10%, probably 7.5% shorter on a treadmill. And I'd just be interested in, you think you're doing something good for yourself, getting your butt down on a treadmill and running. And I'm just interested if there's exposure vulnerability risk or negative, or it's beneficial. If on that between outside stride length and treadmill, or is it adjusted and it actually is more equivalent than you realize? I don't know any of that. I'm just curious.
Yeah, we can tag team.
Good.
So if you're calibrating your stride length or pace or things like that by your watch and not using a foot pod, the likelihood that it's accurate is low. Okay. Because your arm swing is very different. And let's say you're trying to adhere to Aaron's plan, right? And you're like, okay, I have my heart rate at this level, and you do this to look at your watch thinks you stopped for a split second, right? Or it takes me a minute, so I have to kind of play trombone to see what's happening there. Or if you reach for your water bottle or you change your song, those movements outdoors, because you're using the satellites for calibration, your distance is a lot more accurate. Your watch on an indoor treadmill is not. Now, if you're running at a 0% grade, there was a study that I know that shows the only difference actually was less activation in the hamstrings in comparison with road running. So maybe if you're doing, you know, high mileage weeks, that would be one thing to consider. But if you fix the grade on your treadmill and make it like 1.5, or you integrate, you know, intervals of some rolling hills, that's going to take care of itself.
Oh.
So the gold standard really for treadmill would be to have a foot pod, because that's what's actually going to look at what your stride length actually is, as opposed to trying to calibrate it off of your watch.
Okay. And 7.5%. That's a little number.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
small.
It's a little number.
Okay. So don't worry. Don't get concerned that you're messing up your form or increasing your risk for not getting the benefit of the exercise.
Yeah, you're definitely getting benefit of the exercise. The one thing that you're probably not doing is forward leaning. We're going to talk about all that with the running form stuff, because a lot of times, like in my setup, I have a TV up here when I'm watching. So I'm like this, when in fact, when I'm running outside, I'm looking at the ground, right? I'm leaning forward how I should be. So a lot of times that might be part of it, instead of, you know, the normal stride length, because you're going forward, looking down, you've leaned back just a little bit, and now you're not taking as long of a stride. But is that detrimental to anything? Not really.
Also, I think sometimes people have anxiety. I'm actually working with a patient right now who has like extreme anxiety about falling off the back of the treadmill. And so she, like, if this is the treadmill, she runs like clipping it at the very, very front, because she's so afraid, not warranted, but so afraid of falling off the back. And so.
Is anybody falling off? Just me. All right, just me, guys.
I just avoid it.
Hi, I'm Drew, and I've fallen off
I've fallen off the
treadmill.
I dropped my phone.
Hi, Drew.
I like dropped my phone, and I like instinctively like, oh. You never done that?
All right, yes,
well,
all the time.
I admitted that. Thank you for listening.
But I think that that's part of it too, is, you know, we have a tendency to like either to stay really up in the front. And so maybe you are changing just slightly, but it's not going to be something, I don't think, that would ever be detrimental in the long run.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
So I was going to talk about dynamic warm up, or warm up before running. A lot of us are guilty of doing this, and then we go, and having having a good warm up can really be helpful, especially for those sessions where you're looking for high performance. So track sessions, interval sessions, even before tempos, especially long tempos, they're really helpful, because it gets the body ready to go and awake. I believe they should have a flexibility and then like an activation component to them. And so that's what I coach my runners on. If you're doing a long run, could you use the first mile of your 15-mile run, mile or two, to warm up in that period of time? Of course. And so really, at least for me, because I'm old and I need some warm-up time, I like to take my first 2 or 3 miles and be very, very conservative in a long run situation until I've gotten into my groove. But so some of the things that I coach my runners on before that they do their activity is more dynamic stretching. Static stretching on cold muscles is not going to do anything for you. It has a higher risk of injury, and you're not going to actually get the effect of the lengthening. My personal opinion, and you can disagree, but I don't like people foam rolling aggressively before their run, because if your muscle is used to working in this range, right, this is my normal hamstring length range or quad length range, and I roll it, right, because I'm being a good athlete, and I'm going to do like a lot of rolling before I run, and now I have this much range of motion. Well, I'm not used to controlling this. And so your power production, your efficiency might change. I've definitely done that in the pool. I thought I was doing something really good for myself. And then I noticed I didn't have the same like push in the water, because really my lats were not used to having that much elasticity. So saving, like if you have a stick, or you want to do a little roll, like 1, 2, 3, like 10 of them, and then like 1, 2, 3, and then like, you know, you're very, very quickly to just kind of get your circulation going, that's okay. But I would shy away from those prolonged rolling sessions, really save that and the static stretching for after as a recovery tactic. So my favorite stretch, right? It's called the world's greatest stretch, which is why it's my favorite. So what it incorporates all planes of motion. Oh yeah, sorry. Is you step out into a wide lunge and you're trying to keep your back knee really, really straight. And then you're gonna kind of drop down to the inside of your leg. And then if you're flexible, you can drop your elbow. If you're not, you just sit right here. Okay, then you can frame your foot, rock back. That's gonna give you a hamstring on this side. Step up and meet. You step out in your lunge on the other side. Nice straight in the back knee, so you're getting psoas here, hip lengthening, frame, rock back, step and meet. It's a great one. Really good for hip opening. Again, you're not warmed up, so don't force it. A lot of runners, type A personalities, I'm gonna get my elbow down. No, if it doesn't go there, don't do it. Just like be nice to yourself. Inchworms, like we used to do in grade school, where you are, this is gonna be impressive, you're gonna walk out like this, and then you're gonna scoop your feet in until they are flat. Rolling up and repeat. Doing some of these moves can kind of warm up the back of your legs, because that's really where you're going to get your power from activation. We'll talk a lot about that later, but like back body versus front body is really important in running.
Do you want them to try?
Does anyone want to try the world's greatest or inchworms?
Do the world's greatest. Everybody try it. Come on. Give it a shot.
Everybody. Yeah, let's see it, Drew. Where's your flexibility at?
Everybody got room?
Over here.
So you're stepping out into your nice wide lunge. You're going to keep your back knee straight. If you slacken that back knee and bend it, you're like, oh, wow, look at this, so much room. If you straighten that back knee, that back hip flexor should talk to you a little bit, kind of in that front portion of the leg. And then if you try to drop that elbow, you're going to feel that in the front groin. A little bit of rotation, right? I cannot get my elbow down. Maybe some of you are bending and can't, but you know, you're kind of moving for that. Then you're going to frame your foot and rock back. If your knee doesn't go straight, it doesn't go straight, but you should feel that in your hamstring. And then when you step and meet, and then rolling up. And then maybe we try same thing on the other side just to see what the difference is. If you have an asymmetry, like that makes you a human, that's normal. Elbow comes down, maybe touches, maybe doesn't. Framing the foot, rocking back, and then coming up. Any questions about that?
It's the world's greatest.
It's the world's greatest stretch. World's greatest.
An inchworm.
And then the inchworm.
Here, you rock back.
If you're going to frame your foot, and then you're going to try to straighten through your front knee as much as you can. It's probably not going to go straight. That's okay.
Yeah.
And then you're going to step with this back foot to meet, and then roll yourself up.
How many should you do?
I usually do 2 sets of 6.
6 on each side?
Yeah, 6 on each set.
There's literally no research to suggest
No.
this number is better than this number. So yeah, she does 2 sets of 6. I might do 2 sets of 5, and we're both right. So
yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whatever.
The important thing though, you should stretch before you start out.
The dynamic hormones. Yep, dynamic.
Okay.
So maybe you even like in a track situation, like if you were doing track Thursday, plug for track Thursday. If you're doing track Thursday, then maybe you're even doing some like a brief jog before you do it, because then you're warmed up and ready to go. Or if you've done some walking, like your warm up doesn't even have to be a run. That's like mind blowing, but it could be a walk. Right? It could be an aggressive walk. And actually for someone who has come off of injury, I usually have my runners progress back to running through run walk intervals, because it gives the body a break, but also build that impact tolerance, which is really important. So having walk breaks is not like an evil. I think our egos are actually more judging it than anything else.
That's the Galloway plan on how to do marathons.
And I actually had a friend in grad school who did a marathon under 4 hours on the Galloway method. So with the run walk intervals. So, I mean, it does really work for some people, and almost all of the running groups in town will have a interval person who is coaching that way. So for an inchworm, you're going to probably have to bend your knees, unless again, you're one of those bendy people. And then you're gonna walk yourself out into a plank position. Now this would be a great opportunity too, just to hold, see like, can I straighten my knees? Can I squeeze my butt? Can I get my abs engaged? Can I push through my arms to activate like through my shoulders? This is a great position of stability. Maybe you even do a couple of like knee drives or something like that, just to kind of warm up your core. But then you're gonna walk your feet in, keeping your hands down, trying to get your heels all the way flat on the ground. Hi, yeah, hello, hamstrings. And then you roll yourself up. Now, are your feet and hands gonna touch? Probably not, but that's okay. Again, dynamic warm up. You're just getting loose, you're just getting ready. So maybe, and what you'll actually find is that you're able to walk more and more like in terms, or closer and closer as you continue on. So those are some good moves. If you have a lot of neural tension, maybe your back is tight, doing some nerve glides beforehand, just really quickly can be helpful as well. But then I like to go into a brief activation phase. It's almost what the analogy I usually use in the clinic is, it's like when you have those drag racers in the car that they are revving their engine, vroom, 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 right? They're flooding the engine. Now, is that good for it? Yeah. But what are they trying to do? They're trying to get lots of like, you know, activation to the engine. So that way when they take off, they're ready to go. That's the way I think of it in my mind with the activation exercises. They should not be anything that tires you, but instead it should be something that just like wakes up the muscles that you really want to gain your power from. So in my track bag, I usually have a band, a resistance band. I use VersaLoops, but you could also use a TheraBand like such. And then you just make it nice and tight. And then I will stand with a slight bend in my knee, slight hinge forward, because I'm working on my forward lean, and go out to the side, back. Whoops, I'm gonna kick your board, sorry. Out to the side, back. Now, if you were to look at me from the waist up, you wouldn't know that I was moving, right? I have no idea. So it's not this. Everything up here is really still. Here, here. So this is, for those of you who are a little nerdy like myself, this is glute med, glute max, glute med, glute max. Notice they're both glutes. It's all about the booty with running, okay? So I like to do on both sides, because you're actually gonna feel activation in your standing leg against the perturbation of the band in your other leg moving. Nice and slow, maybe 15 each side. Then I'll go back to the first side, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, nice and quick. Again, no movement, but I'm trying to have more of a reaction and pop, right? Get those muscles to go. Pop, 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 pop. Something like that. You can also do a band walk to the side. You can do straight knees if you like, straight knees. You can do a slight bend in your knees. Keeping knees with feet. Snap, crackle, pop. I know, it's fine. It's fine, it's good for you.
Body or your shoes?
Oh no, that's my ankles, it's fine. It's good for them.
My knees do that too.
They're getting really warmed up, guys, because we've been doing our dynamic warm up. So those exercises, again, should not be anything that tires you. One more that you could do is a standing leg RDO, where you are going to keep your hips really, really square to the ground. That's important. Your leg and your back are on the same, they're making a straight line. So it's almost like as you tip forward, leg goes up. As you come up, leg goes back. So I'm gonna show a good one, okay? And then we're gonna show a bad one, okay? So a good one is keeping hips square to the ground and then coming back up. A bad one would be getting here and going, uh-oh, and then bending into my back, where I no longer have that nice straight lean. That's, again, another back body activator. So maybe you're just doing a tip and a tilt. It's like one of those birds.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's what I always think of, but I never.
I don't know what they're called either.
They're always out of the east.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, it's like one of those birds, and like my 16-year-old kiddos, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about.
You want people to try it?
Yeah.
Try that one.
So see if you can do
The bird.
the single, yeah, the bird, the
The
single
bird.
leg bird, yeah.
Good job, Nick.
Yeah, shoulder width apart.
So you're, yes, but you're gonna stand just on one foot. So, and then I like to keep my hands on my hips and think about those bones that you feel in the front facing straight down. They're like headlights that are facing straight down and then back up. And as you pull, you should feel that in your hamstring and glute working to bring you back up. So in terms of number of these, I usually do 12. I don't know. I do 12 on each side.
You bend your knee a little bit.
I do bend my knee a little bit for tight hamstrings, but I would not bend it a whole heck of a lot. It's more like a soft, straight position as opposed to a really deep lunge position.
When I like to do this one, I'll have people, come down to this position, and as they come up, they'll drive their leg through,
Right in the
and
knee.
just kind of go back and forth.
Yeah.
It takes a little more balance, but I do that as well because I think it activates, once again, just our opinions on things. I think as we come up, we're activating our glute, but then we really activate it by bringing it up and like squeezing.
Yeah.
It's just another way to kind of get it going. That's how I typically like to do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So now you've done your dynamic warm up, right? You've maybe done like a half-mile jog. You've done your dynamic warm up. I also do some leg swings, just, really gentle. Yep, a little bit of a circumduction pattern. I avoid that myself, but then what you'll see in Aaron's workouts or really in interval workouts are strides, right? They'll say like 4 by 15 second strides or 3 by 1 minute stride outs, right? What is a stride? Strides are great. Strides are short intervals that are almost like a preparatory set, okay? Again, this is not to fatigue you, it's more to activate. So you're gonna get your biggest bang for your buck out of your speed work. These pickups are gradual increases towards your zone 5 or 85 to 90% of speed. It should not be a gun goes off and all out sprint. You're coasting into it and then going to maintain for that short duration. In this period, you're focusing on your form. So your rest period is generally going to be equal to or more than the stride length itself. When I was doing just running training, and so really doing like 2 or 3 workouts, interval workouts a week, but I wanted to keep working on my speed and my efficiency, I would throw 3 to 5 strides at the end of my aerobic runs. And I think that's a really good strategy because it will kind of get you activated and work on your crispness, your efficiency without taxing you. You will not be tired from doing 3 strides. If you're tired after that run, you ran your easy pace too hard, okay? It's not because you did the strides. But I liked that because then at the end of my slow paced miles, I kind of ended feeling really crisp and efficient. And I felt like it prepared me well for the next day that I was going to do maybe an interval workout, a tempo run, something of that nature. So that would be very difficult to demonstrate in here. But if you see strides on a plan, that's what they're referring to. If you're coming off of an injury, then what I usually will recommend is people actually start at more of a 70% effort and then maybe move up about 5%, and then move up about 5%, as opposed to just going guns out or guns blazing at that 90% effort.
How long?
It could be 15 to 20 seconds.
Okay.
I will sometimes go even up to a minute on the stride, really like drive, and then 1 minute, super easy recovery. Okay. So like if my comfortable pace is between an 8 and an 8:30, my recovery is like a 9:30 after the stride. Okay. At least a minute slower. Maybe you're even walking that period, and that's okay.
So there's no exaggerated movement in the stride. I think I've been working a skip or something into my strides then.
So skips are different. Skips are a whole other category. Your stride, when you're striding out, you're going to be more in a sprint type of mechanic, which is actually the most efficient you will be in running. Like that's why easy paced running, we usually don't have a lot of injury with that if we're truly easy. Okay, so let's just go that we're truly easy on our easy pace. Probably not going to get injured on that. You can be a little lazy and not really pay for it. Not a lot of running injuries occur at a dead out sprint unless you pull something because you're not appropriately warmed up. Why? Because you have to be uber efficient to produce that amount of speed and force. And so most of us actually look cleaner in our running form sprinting than we do other times. It's that in-between period. So I know when I'm doing an analysis of someone in my clinic, I will recommend that they run at a tempo pace, a 10K race pace. Think about a functional threshold pace, because that's where you're like comfortably uncomfortable, right? It's challenging. I mean, by definition, it should be what you can run for an hour, well rested, well fed, and then drop dead at the end. Like you fall over, like there's nothing left. No one ever tests that because it's stupid to do. Okay, maybe Aaron does. I don't know. But yeah, 20 minutes. Yeah. And take the 95% of that. Yeah. So in that range though, at that pace, whatever that pace is for you, that efficiency is going to break down. So with a stride, you might feel like you're actually more at a sprinting formation, but you're not at that top speed. You're not an all out sprint, but you're really kind of close to it. And then I think about gliding as I'm in that kind of pattern as opposed to a skip. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did.
I think a lot of people take strides as like, I need to really stride out. I want to reach as far as I can.
Right.
No, don't do that. That's a no-no. That's an absolute no-no. So strides, it's more of a speed thing, not necessarily a form
So do you do that as part of your dynamic warm-up before you do the main set?
Before I do the main set.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, again, if it's a longer interval, longer intervals, but if it's a longer interval, I usually will go close to a minute, which is just because I think that gives me time to get up towards the speed where I'm going to be targeting and surpass it. If you can surpass what your actual target speed is at some point in that stride, it makes that pace go real easy. Which I like that. I like when it feels easier. So between 3 and 5 should not make you tired. If you're just starting with strides, maybe you're doing 15 seconds of a stride, like get up to speed. Again, that gradual increase, and then you hold that for 15 seconds. And then you have a 45 seconds walk break even, or gentle jog. Because really what you're looking for is that efficiency. It's not going to necessarily be, you're not looking for that mile to be fast. It's more of a preparatory for the next set.
How many sets of strides would you recommend?
I just do one. Yeah, 3 to 5, and then get ready to go. Because again, you don't want to get tired, right? If you do like 12 of them, that's almost like a little mini set, right? So like I would just do a couple of, you could even integrate them casually. Like when I don't have I'm particularly lazy and I don't want to set it up on my watch, or if I'm not on the track where it's easy for me to calibrate, then I'm going to stride again, not stride out in terms of length, but do the gradual increase to that mailbox or that second tree down there. And I just work there and then I recover. And then when I feel ready to do it again, I do it. So it can be fairly casual, but doing that before you do your main set, I have found to be incredibly helpful. On the bike, actually, I asked Aaron to put in prep sets for me before I did my main workouts, even when there weren't any, because I found it to be so helpful before like the shock and awe of just like trying to go all out.
Just a question, but I just want to tell you what I knew. If you don't work with a coach, for me, every coach I've ever worked with, I've only worked with 2 different ones because we're only doing this 2 years. I've never done striders before 5 minutes of a run. So I try to warm up. As you were saying, you do 20 or your first 2 or 3 miles very cautiously. I go at least 5 minutes personally, very just slow and warming up. And I generally try to do my 3 striders or so before the 10-minute mark, because then most of the warm-ups are 10 or 15 minutes in workouts that coaches give you. I guess there might be some that are 20, but I don't know what your view on the striders, but I would definitely not do them right away, but not too long either.
I'll even add to my warm-up. I've never been chastised for doing it either. So usually I'll do at least.
I don't believe you. I know your coach.
No, if I right, never. No, I've been chastised for plenty of other things.
We'll have to edit that out.
But not for adding to the warm up. If I'm not ready to go yet, I'm not ready to go yet. So, you know, like actually, for instance, in my run this morning, I warmed up I think it was 15 minutes, and I was like, no. And so then I actually threw in strides. So my warm up ended up being 20 minutes, I think. The workout was prescribed as 15, but I did 20 because then I felt ready. And then I was able to do what I was supposed to do. So, yeah, I mean, I would definitely say listen to your body. And if you don't feel ready to stride yet, then either go longer, right? I knew I just needed a few more minutes, but go longer in the warm-up. Again, the warm-up should be easy anyway. It's not going to tire you out. And if you're doing 5-mile warm-ups, then like, let's have a conversation about it. But, and then maybe you need to do 75% stride, 80% stride, 85% stride, and kind of work your way into it, especially in cold conditions.
Good, no, I've got nothing else to add to that.
Does anyone else have any questions about that?
Cool.
Running types.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some running types. Jackie's going to take the first couple. Would it help you guys if I demonstrated the running form to see it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
So let's take like a 3-minute break. We'll move the treadmill out front and center, and then Drew is going to be our unfortunate runner that we're going to help coach up today. We're going to make him better. Oh yeah, he's serious now. So do you want to start running and then we'll go into overstride?
Yep. You want to start talking about it?
Okay, so overstriding is kind of almost, we alluded to it a little bit in the warm-up portion when we clarify between striding out and a stride. So an overstrider is someone whose stride length is very, very long, which then makes their cadence slower than optimal. So 180 steps per minute is optimal cadence. And people will say, well, that means I have to change my pace. It does not, okay? It actually does not until we get into the very, very low 5-minute per mile range. So if you're holding 5:06 per mile, then we'll talk about it. But you actually then are a little bit quicker in your cadence even than the 180, but just by a little bit. So 10-minute mile, 8-minute mile, 6-minute mile, 180 steps per minute is optimal cadence for any of those paces.
And that's uphill, downhill all the time.
Uphill, downhill all the time. So when someone does not have that optimal cadence, many times it's because they're reaching too far out in front of them. So their stride length is then too long. It's too much of a distance to be able to go from the back toe walk position to your strike position in that quicker cadence, in the 180 cadence, okay? So here we see that Drew is reaching really far out in front. You can hear that his cadence is slow, right? Now, what does this do? It puts extra pressure on the knees. A lot of times when someone has an overstride cadence, their knee is straight at their initial contact, and you should actually be in a slightly bent 15 degrees if you're ever on Jeopardy, 15 degrees of knee flexion in your initial contact. So overstriding puts a lot of pressure on your joints because your shock absorption is decreased with a ramrod straight leg. So how do we fix that? We fix it a lot of the times with cadence training, okay? And that is downloading a metronome. Yes, it's going to drive you crazy. That's okay, okay? But you're gonna put it in your ear and go up about 5 to 10% from whatever your natural starting cadence is every 2 to 3 weeks.
So something I'm just going to draw for you right here. So this, you still see the video. You still see the video. So this is your torso. There's your knee. Here's your hips. So this is overstriding. Okay. So reaching out exactly like Jackie talked about. So, hurting the knee, pressure in the knee, it will increase compressive forces here. But more importantly, if you've ever had a stress fracture, perfect. I mean, like Vanna White. So if you've ever had a stress fracture, the person that has a stress fracture in their tibia or shin splints, however, stress reaction, all that stuff, they do this. Okay, so the ground reaction force. Anybody take physics? Anybody like physics? Just me, just a giant nerd like me. What?
Must be science.
Oh, perfect. Well, then you're going to understand this more than everybody. So as we hit, we have a ground reaction force, right? So the ground reaction force, this is where our foot is hitting, and this is our center of mass. So right in the center of those two is where the ground reaction force is. And the ground reaction force is going to go straight up just exactly like that. Gravity is very predictable. So as it goes straight up like that, can you see how it intersects right there on your tibia? Intersecting on your tibia right here is actually going to cause a bending moment on a bone, okay? Bones are really good at taking compression. So you take a bone, just like a pop can. You ever played that trick as a kid? Stood on a pop can that was empty, and you're like, I can stand on it. And someone flicks the side and it just crushes. That's exactly what a bone is. It's cylindrical and it's strong. So it takes compression force. But the second we overstride, we put that ground reaction force and bending moment right there in the tibia. That's where we get our stress fracture. Okay? So that's why we don't overstride. You gotta do videos.
No, I was gonna do a metronome.
Okay, cool. Anyway.
So if most people who have trouble with their cadence or they overstride, you'll find that their cadence is somewhere maybe high 150s, low 160s. That's 160. Left, right, 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 left. That's 160. You can see he's having to reach to do that, to lengthen the stride. Now, if you're that person, if you set your metronome because you're like, I learned this at Run Clinic, I'm gonna do 180. You're gonna fall on your face, you're gonna get injured, okay? One of the two. It's too drastic of a change. So again, it's that 5 to 10% increase every 2 to 3 weeks. So giving yourself that chance to kind of acclimate to the next step up, feel comfortable there, acclimate to the next step up, feel comfortable there. I actually just got to videotape a runner that I prescribed this for. He had bilateral Achilles pain. He was like one step away from not running anymore. And I got to video him after a couple of months of working on it. He has no Achilles pain. He's actually running faster than he was before. And he's like, I feel a lot like my legs don't hurt. Like, because he's getting power and force without having this huge stride length and having all of those, wherever the whiteboard went, having all of those ground reaction forces. It was really, really cool to see side by side how much change there was. So overstriding.
Jackie, you said 5 to 10% every 2 to 3 weeks. Mike, I have 2 questions on this one. One, if you're training and you need to stay in zone 2 aerobic, right, workouts, and I know if you try and pick up your cadence, your heart rate's going to go higher. Is that fair?
Potentially, it depends.
On your.
It depends on you. There are some people who will drop. There are some people that if their cadence increases, their heart rate will actually go down because they're being more efficient.
Okay, all right.
But you would still stay in your heart rate zone. Now your pace may vary, right? It may be variable from what you were doing before. I should preface with initially my Achilles guy, he did get slower initially while he was learning it. Okay. It was not like oh my gosh, I shaved 20 seconds overnight.
Yeah.
Like, no, not like that. But once he mastered it and he started being more efficient, he was actually able to run faster at the same effort.
Yeah. So my second question on that one, so if you increase your cadence, say 5%, do you want them to do that? Do we want to do that for the entire workout session? So if we're to run 30 minutes, 40 minutes, or an hour and 15 minutes, you want us to try to do that 5% for the entire workout, or in intervals or sets to try to?
I think you're trying to be consistent.
Yeah.
If it's something that's just, if you find that you cannot sustain the change, then maybe the change needs to be less drastic.
Okay.
I think too, a training tip then is as you get the beat, and you're like, I am just jamming on this beat, hit the pause button on your metronome in your headphones and see if you can keep it. You'll find, I think, or at least I found for myself, I was actually coming down in my cadence, but that I could start to feel when I was getting off after doing it for a little bit of time and going like, whoa, I'm starting to, fire feet again. I'm not actually in that 180. And then boop, now I'm back on it. Yeah. Now see if I can keep it.
Yeah, typically I recommend the first run, listen to it the entire time. The second run, start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, then start, middle, end, then start, end, then start, then end, then done. So it takes about a week to change, and then you change it again and change it again until we get it to where it needs to be.
Yeah. So you've mentioned 180 is the optimal pace.
Yes.
What if I'm a little under that, like 176? Do I need to work on getting to 180, or am I okay in that range?
I think if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, it also depends on your speed too. So if you're running a 7:30 mile and you're doing 176, it's wishy-washy there. If you're running a 10:02 mile and it's 176, I'd be like that. Okay, good.
And this transitioning from being a runner to a triathlete, I've noticed that my stride on bike is short to come off the bike anyway.
Yes,
yeah,
it does.
And I guess you're going to address that later on this morning, but there's a reason you can't run the longer stride getting off the bike. You also just don't move the leg. You're forced to adjust your stride, I think. So it becomes a natural stride at 176 or 180 for me after getting off the bike.
Yeah, and I mean it's kind of the same conversation about shoes. Like if you're not injured and you're having good performance and optimal performance, if you're a beat here or there, does that really matter? In my opinion, no. But I think what is important is your pattern, right? If you're at 177 and I'm always at 177, and then I throw in a run, maybe I'm in the middle of a build and I throw in a run and my cadence drops to 170, I know I'm tired, right? Or, well, for myself, if I throw in a run and my cadence is 187, I'm tired, right? Like I'm no longer functioning what's normal for me. I'm throwing in some kind of compensatory strategy, likely in that scenario.
The only thing, other thing I'll say is 176 for you. If we did a slow motion video analysis of you and your tibia was not slack back, like I showed right there, it's perfectly vertical, I wouldn't change it. I think it wouldn't change absolutely anything. So, and we could talk about Jackie and I can talk about this for hours. So we'll be careful, but striking pattern as well for overstriders. Overstriders always heel strike, so you get this. Don't heel strike. It's horrible. There's nothing wrong with heel striking as long as your tibia is vertical. So if you have a slow motion video and the second you put weight on your leg, your tibia is straight up and down. I don't care how you touch the ground. So if that makes sense. Yeah, so if 176 is perfect for you, it's perfect for you. We don't get beat up over that.
So in terms of increasing the 5% increase every 2 to 3 weeks, how would that translate if you were doing interval running?
Like in walk running?
Yeah, yeah, run walk.
Then I would
you be aiming for like increasing the 5% just during the run, or would you be doing?
Yeah, just during the run.
Okay.
Yep, your walk cadence is going to be different.
Okay. Yeah. Is there anything for improving the walk? Because I see people that do run walk and their run is great, but then the walk, it's like they're wandering around Disney World, and it's like
if you're going to do run walking, the walk should be fast.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. The walk should be fast, so your walking speed should be probably under a 15-minute mile. That makes sense. You should be. You're not Disney World. You're grandma mad mall walking.
Well, technical description.
Yeah. So,
but the cadence, the cadence focus, I would put on the run portion.
Totally.
And then the walking, like Drew said, is with intentionality. Is usually how I say it. I don't say grandma fight, but tomato.
Everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Hip drop.
Hip drop.
Okay. Here we go. So hip drop. Drew is back to being our novice runner, and
Want me to hold it?
Yeah.
The hip drop. Okay, again, try not to nerd out too much, but we want our bodies to go in this direction when we run as fast as possible, correct? We want all of our force to be going this way. So that means that in the rotational plane of motion and in the side-to-side plane of motion, we want as little movement, relatively speaking, as possible. So if we were to draw a line, nicely done. If we were to draw a line through the hips, we would want to see about 5 to 8 degrees of drop, which is not very much. If it's more than that, it doesn't feel good. 5 to 8 degrees. If it's more than that, it's because the glute that you are standing on is no longer stabilizing you. And so you're dropping that hip, hence hip drop. So you'll see the drop on the opposite side because it's the standing leg that we're looking at. Does that make sense? So in this case, if my right leg is my supporting leg, right, and I'm toeing off and I'm standing, all of my right leg is, my left leg is swinging forward, and I don't have enough stability on this side, I'm either going to drop my left hip or I'm going to have a huge lean into that side to give me stability in that frontal plane of motion, okay? What happens then is generally if the hip drops, the knee caves in. We call that a knee valgus. If you see me squat and I do this, like you all know that that's bad, right? We go, ow, don't do that. But when you're running and you do that, you're basically single leg squatting in valgus. Very, very bad for the knees. They hurt, right? So what do we do about that? And then also it can lead to overpronation, increased tibial rotation, overpronation into the foot. So down the chain, we see lots of changes based on that proximal stability. So strengthening the glute med is really important. Remember, in our dynamic warm-up, we alluded to the glute med in our fire hydrant, okay? Or our band walk. We're trying to activate that glute med so we have good stability there. So increasing the strength of that muscle specifically, and you can reference any physical therapist for glute med exercises, clamshells, leg lifts to the side, lateral step downs, hip hikers, band walking, like we have them all, okay? Increasing strength is important. And then also drills to work on proprioception of that knee will help to kick on that muscle. So my favorite, and you can pick in a favorite of yours as well, is I like to do a lunge with a drive, as Drew said, but with a band that is coming. So like my imaginary TheraBand is pulling my knee in. And so I have to activate my glute to pull my knee out. Okay, so so the band is anchored here and it comes around my front knee. Yes, thank you. Oh, okay. So if I don't do anything, my knee gets pulled in, right? Because the band is pulling me. And so I would do maybe a reverse lunge to a march, reverse lunge to a march. And I'm working on keeping my knee tracking straight. That's going to force that activation there. You could do this in a single leg squat. You could do any variation, closed chain really squat exercise with the band. Again, it's pulling that knee in. So you have to activate. A mirror is a great tool in this one, because then you can see that knee, right? And then those two things combined, strengthening the muscle so that the body has the environment of being successful, and proprioception. How do I do that? How do I fire it? Getting the brain-body connection. Those are the two ways to fix your waddle.
I like to have people do a lateral step down. So they'll be sitting here, and I typically put them in front of a mirror, more importantly, and I'll tie like TheraBand around or say, look at your belt, So as they come down, they're going to do a step down this way, and they're going to try to drop like this with their hip. And that's what they're doing when they're running. So we try to dynamically hold it in place and come down very slow and controlled. And then from there, and that's as long as they have enough glute strength. So we measure glute strength. And if they have enough to do it, then they just need to fix the pattern, the firing pattern, and then doing it. So I'll have them warm up with that or any of the other glute exercises. And then I'll put them on the treadmill, and I'll literally stick a mirror in front of them. Look at your hips. You see what they're doing? Fix that. There's a really good research study that talked about hip drop, and what they did with all these, actually collegiate cross country runners.
Yeah.
And they took them. They're like, all these girls have hip drop, so we're going to give them every single glute strengthening exercise ever. So they did it for like 2 months straight. These girls had the strongest, most amazing glutes in the world. They put them back in the treadmill, and they're running from look exactly the same. So it doesn't. I mean, you can be as strong as you can, but it doesn't matter unless you know how to use it. So it's more important to teach them how to use it than it is to just be strong. But you have to be strong
in order to
use it. So it's kind of a one string.
Two things.
Cool.
just itching.
Okay. All right.
Basically the exact same thing.
Yeah. Okay.
We can skip that.
We need to do bouncer.
Yeah. So the next one we're going to talk about is a bouncer, and you're going to see this person. They're going to look like they are, just bumbling along, having a fun time, just bouncing up and down.
A tigger?
Oh, a tigger. We'll call it a tigger. So if we look at Jackie here, number one, she's straight up and down. Okay, and this is what happens on a treadmill at home when you're watching the TV. You end up being this. So she's straight up and down, and all of her motion right now, she's going forward, but she's wasting so much jumping in the air every single time. Okay, this person is going to have Achilles tendonitis, Achilles tendinosis, because they're using their calf and doing this for an entire marathon. You're going to do that, or they're going to have calf cramps. They're going to be like, oh my God, I can make it through 12 miles and feel great, but at the 13th mile, damn, I just locked up, because they're using a muscle that's not made to do what they're doing. So you're doing a really good job with this. So for this one, the easiest way to fix this is literally just push them forward, lean forward. So lean forward, fall forward, fall forward, fall forward. So if we look at this on slow motion video, what we want to see her back and her maximum amount of hip extension to be in a perfect straight plane. If it's not, she's going to look like this, and she's going to be leaning back, and that's when she's going to jump. Okay. We're also going to look at their feet, how high their heels are coming when they're running. It should be at least the height of their knees when they're doing it, when they're pulling this way. So they should be here. If they're running faster, the higher it will go. If that makes sense. But if they're staying down here and at the terminal stance, right when she's about to push off, all she does is just do a little calf jump. They're gonna be called a bouncer. And as you can see, as Jackie leans forward and goes faster, everything cleans up really well. Topsy turvy. So the last one we're going to talk about in just normal dysfunction is someone that is just way too excited when they're running, and they don't know what to do with their arms, they don't know what to do with their torso, and they're just going around like crazy. Okay, so they think that the turn of their torso is going to increase pace and going to increase speed. things like that. She's doing all sorts of stuff right now. She's overstriding. She's doing all sorts of things. You're doing a great job. So it does look like it. So and T-Rex arms. Jackie's the T-Rex.
We all have seen that.
Yeah, they run like this. So remember, when we're running, our arm swing should be equal. We should be coming towards the center of us. It should be, it should look normal. We don't need a ton of rotation at our torso. Our hips and pelvis are going to rotate back and forth as we run, but our shoulders should not be going side to side when we do this. So to clean this up, typically what I'll do is I'll say, what are you doing with your arms? I'll say, put them down to your side for a second. They'll run a little bit goofy like this. I'm like, okay, now barely pick them up. Relax your hands. Relax your hands a little bit, and then we're going to come to the center to your hips. Center to your hips. That's how I typically approach it. Center to hips.
So
go ahead.
just two quick things. I have found if you come from a ball sport background, basketball, soccer is big.
Soccer.
Because there's a lot of change of direction, right? In that sport, not in running, right? So when you have that, like my husband does this a lot when he gets really tired, because he used to play basketball, right? And so he'll start to really try to drive with his arms and he'll start over rotating just because what do you do when you have to change direction real fast? You do have that upper body motion. Also, I thought it was something that was a good cue. One of my coworkers used to use hips to nips, hips to nips. That's your arm swing. My favorite for this is actually putting someone on a Swiss ball, having them sit and work on their arm swing, right? They feel stupid, that's fine. Hips to nips, add a march, switch, add a march. And then that forces them to think about, okay, how do I keep this pattern with my core engaged? And then we translate that, like Drew said, to the treadmill. The mirror is really helpful because you can see it. Okay.
When you see yourself doing it,
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm doing the thing. Oh yeah. And we've all seen those race pictures of ourselves where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna uppercut myself. So those were our running dysfunctions. Hopefully you saw maybe some things that you do and one of those, maybe more. Team bouncer. But hopefully we gave you two. Also, like not only is that me, but these are strategies for me to address it and to fix it with additional strengthening, some coaching up, and some drills.
Questions about those? Anybody? Yeah.
Earlier in the session, you said about your eyes being like down. I have always been, and maybe I'm keeping my head and chin too high, but I've always been told to look, like pick a target. I pick a short distance target and just keep doing that repeatedly through my run, but it's always in front of me and up. But I heard you say you lean forward and you're looking down. I mean, what would you say? How far out are you looking when you say down? Is
20,
that 20 feet?
I don't know, 20, 25 feet.
I know you're not looking down like this. I knew you didn't mean that, but I was just curious, like, is it 20, 30 yards, or is it just at a stop sign? You know what I mean?
I'm typically looking at the ground because
gotcha.
I don't want to fall. Number one, falling too many times, especially in the dark. So I'm always looking down.
Definitely.
But looking down is going to help. It's going to help that forward lean more than anything. And if I could be critical of, with Jackie and I, when we go run a race, I'm not like, oh, am I taking my nutrition? Am I doing this? I'm like, God, look at that running form. It's atrocious. That's what I mean.
We're creepy.
I know.
We want to hand out business cards. Like,
give me a call. You can fix this. Just let me be.
Oh my gosh, watching people pronate with the wrong shoes.
Or crisp.
Yeah, it hurts. It hurts my soul. But when we're running, I always have them focus on the ground.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Because if not, you're going to be lean forward here, and then your head's going to be like this, which is there's nothing wrong with that, but you could be neck pain if that makes sense.
See, I think for me, I definitely must be an overstrider, and I'm looking too far straight out. So maybe that'll help me from overstriding.
So cadence is the number one thing we do for overstriding. If for bouncer forward lean, but most of the time, if I find an overstrider, I'm also adding in forward lean, if that makes sense, most of the time. Because everybody just runs like, for some reason, they just think it's I gotta get my chest up and I'm gonna run like this. But if you want to watch like Kipchoge, is that how you say his name? Yeah, Kipchoge. If you want to watch him run, he's literally falling, if that makes sense. Running is not jumping forward. It is falling forward and catching. And that's the one thing that a lot of people don't understand. They think I have to like jump and land. It's not. It's literally falling forward, catching yourself, throwing yourself to the next bit. And everybody, like the bouncer, they're going to utilize way too much calf or gastroc activation, and they're going to be jumping up when they should be really using their hamstring and pulling, if that makes sense. And scraping mud off their feet is my favorite cue for that.
One other thing for the overstrider, and actually for that I forgot to mention, but I wanted to, is skipping. So a lot of track teams, like if you did track back in high school or college, then they use skips. You kind of mentioned skips earlier. Skips are wonderful drills. You cannot overstride and skip. You will fall. You can't. So when you skip, and you're gonna have to land right underneath yourself. So an A skip, B skip, C skip, there's 3 variations of skipping. A skip, you're landing and you're pulling that leg up and you're at 90 degrees ankle, 90 degrees knee, 90 degrees hip. And if you add that in, B skips are the same, but there is that scraping motion and you should hear it, right? Because it's activating hamstring. And then C skip.
Look at me.
C skip is here, 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 switch, here.
Triple jump.
What's that?
It's like a triple jump.
It is like a triple jump, but it's here, 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 here. For hip mobility, primarily. But skipping can help with that hamstring activation, especially that B skip, as well as the A skip for foot placement. And that's really readily available on YouTube. I think it's like, you type in track skips, I think it's like the second video that comes up. I really like it. I have it saved on my computer at work because there's a professional runner doing it, and then there's his recreational runner buddy doing it next to him. And you can see the difference in their efficiency. Now, they're both skipping and they're both doing it correctly. One doesn't have quite as much mobility or quite as much power, but you can see their form. And I like that side to side comparison. So skipping is something that I'll give people to for overstride, or for, if they're not getting good hip activation or things like that.
Yeah, I typically do it as a single leg drill. I'll make them hold on to something, and then as they, focus on land, pull, and really, I try to coach, like, feel your hamstrings, understand your body, feel your hamstrings working. If you feel like your calves are getting tight, you're doing it wrong. So that, and me personally, especially when I'm like long distance, marathon or crazier, I always end up bouncing, and I always end up upright. I tell myself, what are you doing, Drew? Lean forward. I'm talking to someone, God, lean forward, feel your hamstrings, feel your hamstrings, feel your hamstrings. So.
Bodies are great biofeedback tools. And so I think there is something, and I know for myself and also for people that I've worked with, like, if you start to hurt in a run, that's a great time to go through your checklist of, okay, I know that I'm a bouncer. I know that I do this, or these are my cheats, these are my tendencies. So maybe hitting a few things that you automatically do and kind of readjusting and seeing if it doesn't get better. Body awareness is a really helpful tool in that case. So another tool for.
Can I make one other point?
Oh yeah.
One other thing I want to talk about. Everybody always asks about pain, right? How much pain is too much pain? So I will tell you, not every workout that I do, but at the start of random workouts, maybe every second or third workout, I'm like, oh, what is that? Because we abuse our bodies pretty good, which is okay. It's not a bad thing, but you feel a little twinge of pain. So everybody asks me like, when do I stop? Like, when's the hard, fast no? Like, what are you doing to yourself? So a twinge of pain that starts, and we rated on that beautiful 0 to 10 scale, where there's a smiley face scale for kids. I like that one better.
0 is none, 10 is being mauled by a bear.
Thank you. Emergency room. So I say that all the time. But what I tell people is if it's sharp pain, like you step and it's like, whoa, what was that? You know, and the next step, whoa, what was that? It's time to stop. Yeah, and that's when you call the sag wagon. Hey, something could pick me up. Like, I can't, this is not a good idea for me. But if it's a 2 out of 10, a 1 out of 10, a 3 out of 10, and it fluctuates or goes away as you go, especially if you're coming back from injury, that's okay. Like, it's okay to hurt a little bit. You know, your calf starts tightening up a little bit while you're running. Stop, stretch a little bit, move around, do some little movements, you know, give yourself a little break, drink some water, start again. Yeah, there's not, you know, everybody, I get that question all the time.
Yeah.
So at least now you guys can hear an answer on that.
And my rules for that, I have 3, because I like 3 bullet points.
Less than a 3 out of 10 during and then after the run. If you do your run and you're like, that wasn't that bad, but then like maybe an hour or 2 later, you're like, oh my God, like I can feel my heartbeat in my fill in the blank and it's bad, then you're not compensating for the inflammation that you incur during that run. I don't like when people are compensating with gait deviation. So if you're like favoring that leg, or you're like, man, I'm doing something funky because maybe my ankle is catching and I don't want to pronate, because when I do that, or plantar fasciitis, that's a big one. Plantar fasciitis, people don't pronate anymore. They'll run on the sides of their feet, like they're on blades, because they know that when they pronate and that arch stretches, that's what's going to cause that little micro tear, which is going to give you that ping in your heel. And so what do? Their bodies are smart and they go, not doing it. And so then they run on the sides of their feet. So if you find like, oh, I can't even feel my big toe. I'm not finding my big toe at all. I'm not doing X, Y, and Z that I know I normally do. You got to stop, because you're going to throw something else off. Like you're going to hurt something else, trying not to hurt the thing that you originally hurt, right? And then for distance runners, you cannot run more than half your weekly mileage at one time. You can't do it because you have not built the impact tolerance for that. So I had people, I added this rule because I had sneaky people, and they would come in and they'd be like, I ran 2 miles on Monday and I ran 3 miles on Wednesday because I wanted to budget my 15-mile run with my group on Saturday. So I was going to take it easy during the beginning of the week so I could do my long run on Saturday. No, you haven't built the fitness, the impact tolerance, the tissue resiliency to then compensate for 15 miles worth of running when you were doing your 5 miles earlier in the week. So it's not like you have chips to spend and you can spend them any way you want. You can't push them all to the center for your long run because you think that's what's going to make you better. I mean, your overall mileage, like, you know, coaching differences, you know, what's a good mileage to be at for whatever distance is going to vary per the person and per their goals. But you won't see a plan written where it's that low of a mileage and then that high of a mileage. It's too drastic. The body isn't prepared for it. So if you look at your shoe, you should be able to see potentially like where do I see the most wear? Now, if your shoe's brand new or you only have like 50 miles, then you know, pretend. But if this is like a good solid 300-mile shoe, you should be able to see, like as you can see on these lovely ones, my heel is brand new, okay? Because my heel doesn't come down. I don't heel strike. I'm more mid to forefoot. You can tell from the shoe. If you look at the side of your shoe, sorry, go back to the back. I missed one point. So you should be able to see potentially where your contact point is. And then what I always do too is I have people look at where their big toe should be. If that looks brand spanking new, then there may be something going on with your toe off or your push off.
great toe mobility. Like I'm a big toe Nazi in the clinic. Like I carry my flag proudly, because you should have 60 degrees, just a lot of degrees, 60 degrees of extension in your big toe. And if you aren't really getting there, if you're not fully supinating and pushing off, you're losing tons of power because you're pushing off of a floppy foot. So that is one thing, like when someone comes in for a gait analysis and I'm looking at their shoes, that's one like flag in my mind of, oh, maybe their great toe mobility is not what it should be. Maybe they have some arch tightness, maybe they have some calf tightness, but something funky, like it's kind of like a red light that's blinking for me to pay attention to it. The side of your shoe, like this, I'm on Team Saucony, is a neutral shoe. This all looks the same. There's no change here. A stability shoe almost always has a different color, additional build up in the arch of the shoe. And that is to control someone who doesn't have enough pronation and that it is early. Yeah, that's a beautiful example. So right here, you see how that's a different color there. That's additional support. Okay.
It's just harder plastic, a harder foam, a thicker foam. Easiest way to test. Grab your shoe. Everybody grab your shoe. Twist it. Twist it. Does it twist? I'm gonna show you an example here. I'm gonna show this in the camera. See how this does not twist at all. Okay. This is a stability shoe or a light stability shoe. Ready? Now, this is a very different shoe. Watch what happens.
Whoa.
Okay. So this is a neutral shoe. It's completely different, if that makes sense. And I'll make a point real quick. If you going to Fleet Feet is awesome because they will make sure your foot is perfect for the fit of the shoe, if that makes sense. Your foot is going to fit there well. They will also make you go out and run, and they're going to look for very basic things. And if you sit there and talk to any of them, they're not going to claim to be gait analysis people. They're going to make sure you're not overpronating, and they're like, doesn't look bad, try it. And the beautiful thing about them, if it's not right, take it back. They will exchange it and get you one that you like. That's the beautiful thing about them. And if you talk to Frank, he's going to say, we're not gait analysis. I've asked him a couple of times. We're not gait analysis people, Drew. That's not. We used to have a treadmill in there, and then we used to make people run. And he's like, we were trying to do things that we didn't know what we were doing. And he fully admits that. They don't do that anymore. They make sure that it's right. And if they find somebody that needs something, they are shooting them to Jackie, to me, to Oxford, to all the other places around wherever they're closest to, for that matter. So go ahead.
Absolutely. So we differ a little bit here, but the way that I view a shoe is if you are losing control of your pronation early in the gait cycle. So your foot hits the ground and you pronate rapidly or too much, likely a stability shoe is a good option for you. And that may be all you need. If you overpronate at the very end, or you struggle to pull yourself into supination at the end of your foot contact on the ground. So you land supinated, you pronate as you should, and then you supinate.
So land supinated,
pronate,
and then resupinate.
I've had people come in before and they say, I do pronate. I'm like, that's a good thing. Yeah, it got kind of a bad name for a while. Like, no, you should. It's good. It's shock absorption. We want to pronate and then we want to resupinate. If you struggle with resupination, potentially an insole, a posting, an orthotic would be a better option simply because the stability in that man's shoe is actually bypassed by the time that you lose control of the pronation. Like you're good until you're not, but if the stability is in the back half, it's not necessarily affecting that forefoot or the additional motion because you've already run out of that stability from the shoe. So if you are an overpronator, I put you into two categories and then we work on it. And sometimes you can actually still use a neutral shoe. We just might need to do some foot education, re-education in the muscles and work with the form. Sometimes people overpronate because
their proximal control, their hip control, or their knee control is bad. Maybe there's nothing wrong with their foot at all. Maybe it's coming from up the chain. So those are things that we look at.
Yeah, and I've had so many runners come in, and they say they have foot pain. They typically have what we're going to call posterior tibial pain. Okay, so it's behind the bump in here called your malleolus back here, and you take their shoes off, you look at them, they have very flat feet, and you look at their shoe, and they're in the most crazy control shoe ever. And for some reason, they always put these people in Mizunos.
Yes, it's true.
Mizunos are so ASICs. Most ASICs have some little form of control. There are the racing flats and other things do not. And there's a couple of the newer ASIC models do not as well. What's that? Meta Sky Speed or Meta Racer. They do not have pronation control. They are a neutral shoe. They're trying to go after Nike. But the Mizunos, for some reason, are the most torsionally stiff shoes in the world. So if you take somebody that has flat feet, but doesn't, like Jackie's got a little bit flatter of arches, similar to me, but I don't overpronate, neither does she. Okay, so you take somebody that doesn't overpronate, but their foot looks like they should overpronate, and you put them in a Mizuno, they're going to hit in that supinated position, really supinated, and they're going to slam down, boom, and it's going to sound really loud when they run on the treadmill. When you run on the treadmill, it should, I mean, you heard the difference when I was overstriding and when I was running normally. It should be quiet. It should not sound like an elephant's in the room running on the treadmill. So when you put somebody in a control shoe, especially oddly enough Mizunos, that doesn't need it, you're gonna give them further pain than if you don't, if you put them in a neutral shoe. So to Jackie's point, function over form. It doesn't matter what your foot looks like. It matters what happens when you're running. So that makes sense. I'm a crazy optimist when it comes to shoe selection. I don't like to put things in the shoe. If that makes sense. I'm a purist. I want the shoe to be matched to you. There's lots of people that just can't happen because they're they won't resupinate. But in that case, when they won't resupinate at the end and they're not really an overpronator, an orthotic will help that person. Or those terrible Nike shoes with the carbon plates in it are literally what they do is they force you to stay supinated, and they make you take off of we call it a rigid lever. So your foot, a pronated foot is shock absorption. So it's to take up shock so that we're not jumping around on our heels all day long. But a pronated foot is a floppy foot. Okay. If we don't resupinate, we lose efficiency, as Jackie said. It's called windlass. We lose that, and it's like we're running in sand. Okay. And you're going to see other foot deformities from this as well, being, your big toe is going to start facing out. You're going to take off. You're going to take off like this. I'm sure you've seen somebody running that looks like that. So in that situation, with the addition of every company has carbon. Are those fiberglass ones?
No, these are the speed, but yes,
yeah,
these are the endorphin speeds. So this is my training shoe, but I do race in the pro, which has the carbon.
Which has carbon, but that one, and all of the new Nikes basically either have carbon or fiberglass in them. And what that does is it makes it not. I should have brought a shoe. No one has one in here. Take your shoe. So if we look at this shoe and we try to bend it, and this one has a little bit of bend to it, but if you grab one of the Nikes, you can't do that versus the Nike Free that you have that we can literally bend it straight in half. So there's a specific shoe for every single person. You just have to make sure you find it. What I would recommend is go get fit at Fleet Feet. Do that first, or whomever you like to get fit by shoes by. And then if you're really concerned, if you have pain in the past, let one of the two of us, someone that knows what they're doing with gait, look at you run, and we can say, no, that's not the right one, or we can say, you know what, that's not bad, we should do this to it, or we can kind of make tweaks and make it right for you. That's the biggest thing. The other thing I'll talk about with shoes real quick. Shoes need recovery after you run to them, just like you need recovery, if that makes sense. The foam is not made to get the hell beat out of it all the time. So your running shoes, you're looking at me like I'm crazy. Your running shoes should not be the shoes you're walking around in all day.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
which is extreme.
Aaron's crazy. He literally rotates. I think he rotates 6 pairs of shoes.
Yeah, he gives his shoes like a week of rest. And no, I'm just kidding.
I'm serious. So the foam compresses, and then as you don't stand in it, it's going to expand and go back to where it was. So if you have one pair of shoes and you're running in them, let's say every other day, and you take them off, and the second you get done with your run, you switch into other shoes and walk around in those. That's probably okay.
Yeah.
Rotating 2 pairs of shoes is a great idea. You're going to get probably a little bit more time out of both of them. It's a good idea to do.
And don't walk in them.
Yeah.
Don't go to the mall in your running shoes.
Yeah, your running shoes should be running
God.
only, if that makes sense. Old running shoes, being around in them all day, it doesn't matter. So mileage wise, some manufacturers are going to claim, like Hoka's are like, oh, you're going to get 600 miles out of these. I don't know about that. The foam not only has a mileage time, right, but it also has a shelf life. Okay, so you're like, oh, I got fit from this one pair of Brooks Ghosts, and the Brooks Ghost 12s, and it was my favorite one. The 13 was just not for me, so I bought 17 pairs of 12s now, but they're all 7 years old. That foam is breaking down. Okay, it's breaking down. It's not. The shoe manufacturers know what they're doing. Okay, they're going to make it really nice for you to run, but they're going to make it only really nice for you to run for a certain amount of time, so you buy more, if that makes sense. So it's, that's what it comes down to. So don't buy old stock of shoes. Not a good idea for you, just because they're already beat up.
What do you think of Hoka in general, the concept?
Hoka's are great.
Okay.
If you need, like, Hoka's got the same thing that Saucony has, the same thing that ASICS has. I mean, New Balance, they're all the same. They have a fast shoe, a flat shoe, a carbon shoe, a very squishy shoe. So in pronation control, they all kind of go the gamut of everything. So if I'm doing really long runs, then I run in Hoka Carbon X's because I think they're not as squishy as like the Bondi or the One or whatever the one.
Oh yeah.
But those are the Clifton Fine. They're like clouds. The Carbon X is not like that, but it's more responsive. It feels more like my racing shoe. So I will run in that one. Like trail runs, I have, oh my God, what's the name? Speed Goats. I have Speed Goats for trail runs or like trail marathons or ultras. So
it's going to be preference. So usually what I tell people is that you need to be in a shoe family. Okay, so if you're a neutral shoe person, you need to find a neutral shoe. Now, if you prefer the stiffness of a Mizuno, great, buy a Mizuno. If you wanted to have a little bit more, like I really enjoy the Sauconys. I've run in a Hoka before, and I just don't like it. I want to feel my foot on the ground. I feel like I get clunky and I get lazy in my form if I'm in a squishy shoe. But I also don't have a ton of impact problems where I need that extra squish. Some people need extra squish. So if you like Nike, if you let whatever brand of shoe feels good to your foot, then just stay within that shoe family. So if you need a light stability shoe, or you need a moderate stability or a neutral or whatever it is, like Drew said, all of those companies have shoes in that category. You just got to find it. So you don't want to go and say, well, I'm a Mizuno person, so I'm going to die on that hill, and they only have stability shoes and I'm a neutral, but I want my Mizuno. No, you don't. No, you don't. But as long as you're in that category, it's going to be whatever feels good to your foot. Yeah. And my standing shoe at work, like we stand all day. My standing shoe at work is vastly different from the shoe that I run with too. Like if I've forgotten my shoes one time and I had to wear my running shoes all day at work, I kid you not, my feet hurt so bad halfway through my day because I'm not used to standing in something like this. I stand in a completely different shoe. So your activity of choice for the shoe can vary as well. Brick running, because we're triathletes here.
Oh yeah, we're running out of time here. Look out, we get too excited.
I know. But okay, so brick running. Most people's experience with brick running is either I am off the bike and I feel amazing. And so I'm going to go and I feel like this is super easy for me. And then you look down and you're like, I'm running a 6-minute mile. It must be my day. And then it's not your day. Okay? there's that person, or there's the person that gets off the bike and is like, my legs feel like they have dipped in cement. They're heavy. I'm clopping around. When is this going to be over? Usually you're in one of those two camps. You feel good coming off the bike and the run feels good to you, but the control is sketch. And so you blow yourself up. Or you're the person who's like, I just cannot transition off the bike. My running form when I'm running standalone run is different. I feel so much different when I am running standalone versus running off the bike. And there are ways to train specifically for each of those camps. So the Ironman coach is going to talk about that.
Ironman. So what I like to recommend is at minimum, absolute minimum, when you're in, not necessarily in the first part of your build phase, but when you're in competition phase, you need to be run off bike 2 days a week, minimum. And there, a lot of people will say, well, we have a brick workout. So I did my bike in the morning and I ran in the afternoon. That's fine too. That's fine. But at 2 days of the week, it's got to be specific training. So you need to be getting ready to do that right away. Okay. So get off, practice. The only way you're better at it is if you do it. So at the end of your cycle, especially during a race, I do this every time of a race. End of my race, I know I've got less than a mile left or a mile left. I'll take down a couple gears. I'll make sure I'm spinning at 90 RPM, oddly enough. Why? Because that translates to 180 steps per minute. Okay. So this 90 RPM is for both sides. So it's 180 steps per minute. I'm going to get myself warmed up and ready. Because if not, you're going to come out and you're going to overstride because you've literally done that, especially in an Ironman, especially in a half Ironman when you've been sitting there for 3 to 7 hours, however long. So I always go to 90 RPM, and same thing with all my brick workouts. Slow it down. It's a cool down phase on the end of your whatever the set was that you did for the brick. Go to 90 RPM, spin it out a little bit for the last 5 minutes, jump off, put your shoes on, and go. Practice. Don't dilly-dally around. You drink a little bit of water. You can do a couple little stretches. Start out, and you're already warmed up. That's the beauty. You're warmed up, so go straight into what your race pace is going to be. Is how we typically do it. Now there's an idea that you could do a longer bike and then just do an aerobic run afterwards. That's okay. You're still getting the turnover there. But if we're in the competition phase and we're right before we're ready to go, you should literally be going straight into what your race pace is. And we can talk a little bit about heart rate zones and what your race pace should be. So if we're talking a sprint race for a triathlon, your heart rate, you're gonna peg it, right? So you've got a 5K. You can do anything for a 5K. If you're gonna go to high end zone 4, that's what I would shoot for. If I'm gonna do a sprint triathlon. Olympic, start bringing it back down. So there's A and B zones in your heart rate. It's basically the top end, top 50%, bottom 50%. So in zone 4, we do the same thing. For the majority of us, we want to actually think about zone 3 for the most of our race efforts. The longer the distance, the lower the heart rate. Just remember that. Longer the distance, lower the heart rate. So and heart rate zones, you can Google that. That's a very specific thing to get heart rate zones for you. There's formulas that you can follow. However, they're not great. It's just a formula based on your age. So if you look at me and you look at my maximum testing heart rate, I can test way higher than what I should get my heart rate to. Jackie, same thing, way higher than what she should be able to get her heart rate to, right? So the old 220 minus your age. Okay, so if we put that right, so I should not be able to get my heart rate to 190, right? That doesn't make sense. Thank you for saying I'm young. So I should not be able to get my heart rate that high. Okay, but I can get my heart rate to, I've got it to 192, 193 before on an FTP test. Okay.
I hit 196 at Steelhead running at mile 11.
There you go. So that
it was uphill.
That's too high for race pace. Let's do it. I know.
Said empty the tank, man. Emptied it.
So basically, your heart rate zones, and that's we can that's something you need to have a conversation with someone that knows what they're talking about. But in that zone 3 for your brick runs, the longer run, I'm doing an Ironman race, it's zone 3A. Okay, it's the bottom end of zone 3. Some people will actually do an Ironman in zone 2. Okay, and the zones based, the simplest way to say this is the lower my heart rate, the easier it is to catabolize or burn fat. Okay, the higher my heart rate, we have to use quick digestible carbohydrates. Because we've talked about nutrition, and that's going to be in a whole nother. we'll let Aaron dip into that. He'll get really nerdy on you. But basically, having a correct amount of carbohydrates for your run is kind of the trick. But being more efficient and burning fat is even better. So 40,000 calories. 40,000 calories is what every single person in this room has of fat stores to use right now. Okay, 40,000 calories. That's a long run. Okay, you could do a 200-mile ultra on 40,000 calories. Okay, taking in nothing. If your heart rate is low enough, and if you are appropriately fat oxidized. 3,500 is about all you have as far as carbohydrates go via in your muscles and in your liver. So 3,500 is all you have max. That's at the absolute. That means you're topped off. So heart rate zones are really important for the brick runs. So on your brick runs, you're going short. They need to be intentional. They need to be fast. So you're doing a sprint. Zone 4. We should be huffing and puffing. You should not be able to talk to somebody while you're doing it.
How far should I go?
That's all dependent on you. It's super complicated. But if I was doing that, I'd be working my way 2 to 3 miles on the top end of my max for that, and whatever that translates to time wise.
But you would start much lower.
Yeah, you'd start at 5 minutes at zone 4.
So what Jackie talked about, the various, what most people fall into camps.
Yep.
Right? So let's say I get off the bike, and what did you say? You're just going to blow up right at the start.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a lot of, yeah.
What would you do?
So,
what would you recommend for a person who finds himself in that state?
Heart rate control.
Heart rate control.
Okay.
Yeah. So I maybe fortunately or unfortunately, I feel amazing off the bike. I've PR'd my 10K in a triathlon. So I actually run faster off the bike than I do standalone. Because I'm warmed up, I'm ready to go. I think it helps with flexibility issues. So in the beginning, actually it was kind of funny because at my last 70.3, I guess the one in Steelhead, Brett took a video of me. My husband took a video of me coming out of transition. He's like, "You're doing great. Slow down, not too fast." And someone was like, "Did he tell you to slow down?" And I was like, and he's right. Because you can get into where you're not feeling that heart rate high, as that heart rate spike, because you do have a natural gait off of the bike. So I worked with a coach. I had very specific rules and zones. And so for a half marathon, it was broken down. And again, running is my strength, so this might not work for everyone, but for the first 6 miles, I had a heart rate zone for that. And then 6 to 9, I could go up for myself about 10 beats. And then at mile 9, he said, throw it out and empty the tank. Let's see what you got at the end. And I was able to drop 8 places doing that on the run. But I will say, if I had been going off of pace in the beginning, I would have been extremely frustrated. It was a hot day. It was a windy day. And so I had a target of what I thought I could hit for the half marathon, and I did not hit it. But neither did anybody else, right?
Yeah,
so
race the conditions.
Race the conditions. And so I remember thinking, I could feel in my body that I wasn't going as fast as I thought I should have been. And if I didn't respect that heart rate zone, I would have blown myself up, and I would have had no gas in the tank at the end. But instead, I thought to myself, if I suck, at least I followed the rules, and then it's his job to fix it. Not kidding. Literally went through my mind. And I was like, I'm just going to do the thing. And if I don't do well, then I'm like, well, I followed your rules. So what you got to say about that? And it actually didn't work very well, obviously. So I think that respecting, like you would respect your power or your heart rate on your bike, right? Because 6 miles an hour up a hill, you might be in zone 4, right, on a bike. Conversely, going downhill at 30 miles an hour, you might drop down to zone 1, zone 2, right? So it's the same thing with running. Your pace is going to vary based on conditions, based on terrain. Your heart rate, though, is a really good representation of what your body is actually doing. And so if you can control yourself in the beginning and then allow yourself, I mean, to drift, if that's you and you allow yourself to boo, and then just like make it hurt a little bit at the end, then, you know, that's going to be much more sustainable than if you go out way too fast and you run your first 10K in 13 minutes and you're like, this is my day. And then it's not your day. That's a long walk. I will tell you from experience, it was not great.
So the same thing coming off the bike. So a half Ironman, we're going to talk about half Ironman. We should be in zone 3B, the top end of zone 3. Okay. You should be hitting pretty good. You might start creeping into zone 4. You know, you need to back off. Okay. And that is up and down hills. That is because of, you know, heat and humidity is a big factor with that. When you start running out of calories, your heart rate's going to jump up. I mean, there's so many different factors, but your heart rate is always going to tell you what you're doing. Okay. Because at a certain heart rate, it's exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. It's going to tell you exactly what you're burning. If that makes sense. So that's the kind of important part.
And you'll know what that feels like when you practice.
Yeah.
So the more you run off the bike, even if it is short, it's not like you have to do an hour run off the bike, you know, necessarily. Like that's probably not, you know, it's definitely not where you start. And sometimes you don't even think you end up there. But the more you can feel what that heart rate feels like, the more that you can practice, even if it's short-lived, I think it's really beneficial in learning that control. Or if you're the cement block person coming off the bike, how do I work through that? Because sometimes it gets much, much better, right? There are people that are very successful in triathlon and they don't have that experience of I'm flying. They are like struggling, but they work out of it and they work into their run. If you've practiced, you know how to do that because you felt it and you're like, okay, the first mile is always going to suck for me. So, but I know that I can work into it, right? You start to learn your tendencies and okay, I need to keep good form. I need to focus on my hydration. What is my nutrition plan for the run? 1 cup in me, 1 cup over me, right? Keep yourself cool. And then you'll know, you'll have practiced on how to work into your run if it's not a natural thing for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're coming up on time.
Yeah.
I thought we opened up for questions.
Yeah.
Let me make one more point for brick run stuff. So like I said, 2 days a week is minimum. That's what you should be doing in competition phase, at least minimum. Time of brick runs. You don't want to go from, you know, if you're doing an Ironman, you're not going to go run a marathon during your longest brick run. You're not doing that. Okay. That your body doesn't need that. You're asking for injury. Okay. That's a lot of things. Now, some of the professional triathletes, they'll step out and they will do like a 40K, so almost a marathon after like an hour or 2 long run as a different kind of brick run. However, they're not doing that at race effort. Okay, so a race effort brick run, if you're going out in zone for 70.3 zone 3B, you start out with 10 minutes and you get yourself used to 5 minutes, 10 minutes. The max that I would personally recommend is like 45 minutes max. You don't need anything more than that. You know what it feels like. You know what you're doing. Your longer runs are going to be lighter because you're just asking for injury. But 45 minutes, absolute max. For an Ironman, maybe an hour, absolute max. There's no reason to go crazier than that because you're asking for an injury, basically. And that in volume and everything else, if that makes sense. But the trick, kind of what Jackie said, watch your heart rate. If your heart rate's creeping and your pace is not what it has been before, probably hot, dump water on you. I've been known to grab ice. That's my favorite thing to do. I'll unzip my kit, grab ice, and I just dump it into my kit, and I kind of hold it right on my chest. Or I take my hat off, go like this to it, go dump ice in, I'll literally put it on my head. You have ice melting down your body, try to maintain your core temperature. A lot of the kits are designed to be closed. To be closed, you're actually going to be cooler, which is crazy. A lot of the fabrics. But if you're really hot, unzip your kit a little bit, whatever you have to do. Roll your shirt up, whatever you have to do. Get air on you, get moving. The cold towels, the everything. Dump, one in your mouth, one in your head, one in your mouth, one in your head, every single time. And but heart rate, follow your heart rate is the most important thing. Because if you go out and instead of 153 beats per minute, what's your Ah, damn, I was close. Okay, so 155. So you go out at one. You're supposed to go out at 155, and that's what I'm supposed to hold the entire time. And I go out and I hit 172 beats per minute for the first 6 miles. What you've just done is you've taken any carbohydrate stores that you had, and you just ate every single one of them. Okay, and you went through them real fast. So what's going to happen? You are going to do one of two things. You're either going to bonk. Everybody says they bonk. They have no energy. Man, I just can't do this. Okay. You're going to do that, or your body's going to lock up and cramp. It's going to happen no matter what. One of the two are going to happen if you do that. Eating wise during, there's lots of different strategies. And nutrition is a very personal thing. Carbohydrates during the run, absolutely. Remember, the second you eat it, 30 minutes. You got 30 minutes after you eat it before it gets to your muscles. So mouth to muscles, 30 minutes minimum. Okay, so the second you start running, the second you start eating, if that makes sense. Yeah, and that's a very personalized nutrition thing. That's going to be a later date. So, any other points there, Jeff?